Hey! Alright, here is episode 2 of A Guy in His Closet. I'm pretty proud of this episode, and I really hope you guys like it. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff today. It's going to talk about art, going to talk about the government, my favorite album, corporations, the NBA, and last but not least, a special guest. So I hope you guys like it. Yeah. Alright, so the first thing I want to talk to y'all about today is art and how it's evolved and been with us and like what we've used it for since we've been on this planet. Well, first it's been around since like we've been in caves, and with the cave art, and it's come with us all the way through, the first civilizations to ancient Greece, England, then to like today with internet artists and stuff like that and graffiti artists. For a majority of human history, art was used to create a visual representation of the world. Well, a one-to-one version of it, you know? Like they wanted to get as close to reality as possible. For example, like a lot of people would paint landscapes. They would like travel far from home, paint the landscape, come home, and show people. Because a lot of the people who see these paintings and love these paintings are never going to be able to like see those landscapes. So that was like a large part of art back then. It was creating a one-to-one version of the world to spread and share beauty. That was its purpose. Or memorializing somebody. People used portraits to signify importance in the same way that same way that people use statues. Over time, art kind of morphed into something else. It's still a lot of it is still about, creating like a one-to-one aspect, that's still a big part of it, but it's morphed and changed into a medium for us to express emotions and feelings that we don't particularly understand. One of the first like big artists to benefit off of this, well, he didn't really benefit because he died before people really cared about it, but Vincent van Gogh was one of the first to like really get big off of it. And his art didn't really care about being a one-to-one rendition of the world. It was more about expressing the emotions he had or somebody would have while being in that world. Like he used like the paint and the colors and the shapes that he drew to mimic the emotions. The further we travel as a society, the more emotion comes to the foreground in art. And one pretty big example of this in like modern times is my favorite artist, Basquiat. One of his quotes is that he sees painting as more of a way to express certain ideas rather than creating a one-to-one version of the world, And this is a really interesting take. And this is how he rose to fame. And his drawings are far, far from one-to-one versions of the world. His art style is mostly something, it looks like something a kid would have drawn. right? And that was intentional because he would look at the stuff kids would draw and he'd say he liked it more than the stuff in museums and like what quote unquote real artists were drawing. This way of painting and seeing art really changed the way that people valued and saw art, you know? Because the way we judged the beauty of an art piece was by how realistic it looked. But with him, it was more about what type of ideas could he put into the painting or drawing or anything. He was a lot more focused on expressing an idea rather than mimicking the world. Every brushstroke to him had a meaning, and he would scribble words in like the background and then cross them out to. Sometimes he didn't want you to focus on them, and sometimes he crossed them out so that you would focus on them, and not being able to see them would, appeal to your human nature to want to read it. And, speaking of children, government is a lot like a child in the sense that, and I mean like a small child, like the type of, like around the age where spanking them on the butt or slapping them on the wrist or giving them a little pinch is like a valid form of punishment, you know? Well, a lot of kids don't listen to warnings because they don't see why they should listen until something bad happens to them. For example, a lot of kids may be in the kitchen while their parents are cooking and they say, hey, don't touch the stove, don't touch the pot, don't touch the fire, you're going to hurt yourself. Kids hear that and ignore it, and they don't see why they shouldn't touch it, and they don't understand how it could hurt them. And eventually, they go on and they touch it. They burn themselves, and now they know, oh, I shouldn't have touched it, and they aren't going to touch it anymore. Or you tell a kid, stop running around in the house, stop running around in the house, stop running around in the house, and you tell them this, they ignore you. Eventually, they break something, and then right when they break it, you spank them, and now they know, one, running around the house might lead to me breaking something, and if I break something, my parents are going to be upset, and I'm going to get hit. So they stop doing that. Eventually, they grow out of this stage, and spanking them doesn't really have an effect anymore, and they know better, right? Governments act in a very similar fashion. They don't listen to warnings like peaceful protests, right? They are the people telling the government that they are fed up and they are demanding change, right? The government hears this and they ignore it or even demonize them, like when Colin Kaepernick peacefully and respectfully knelt for the national anthem. He felt as though that was the best way to go about it. He even asked a veteran what would be a respectful way to protest, and that was the veteran's suggestion. But our president condemned him and demonized him and made him out to be an enemy and twisted his message about trying to spread awareness for police brutality against marginalized people, specifically black men. The president twisted his message into disrespect for the army and the military, and he turned it into a fight against either you He turned it into a situation where either you are for Black Lives Matter or you hate the military, which is not at all a position that Colin Kaepernick wanted to spread, but that's what was forced upon him, and how kneeling was viewed because of the words of the president. And that's one example of the government ignoring peaceful protests. A more powerful example is Martin Luther King Jr. marching and spending his whole activist career, well, in like in the spotlight, the main, while he was, famous for he spent that whole portion of his life protesting Jim Crow era laws, and segregation in this country. He spent his whole life for the abolishment of those laws. And every once in a while he would get like a win here and there, like a small one. Like the bus boycott. Uh, that was a real big one. And little ones here and there. But his ultimate goal was to enact federal and national change, which he never saw in his lifetime. But one day he was murdered, assassinated. This angered the public to such an extent that the country was under insane riots for over a week. The worst riots the country's ever seen, and almost all the major cities, just horrible, horrible riots. Shortly after, the Civil Rights Bill, the Civil Rights Act, was passed. So my point is that the people of this country have a power, and that power is their ability to riot. Rioting in and of itself is a bad thing that the government should try to stop. And the only non-tyrannical way to stop that would be to listen to peaceful protests and at the very least give them the opportunity to make their points heard. Because that is how you prevent anger from building up throughout the country. What do I know? I'm just a guy in a closet. Okay, so tip number 3. If you're following along from the last episode, if you ever feel lonely, watch a horror movie before you go to bed. Then you won't feel alone at night. Alright, so last time I talked about how Chance the Rapper is he's in my top 5, and how acid rap is one of my favorite projects, especially my favorite mixtape. So I figured this week I should talk about somebody else in my top 5 and a project that I love. That is Kendrick Lamar and his sophomore major label album, To Pimp a Butterfly. I love this album so much. It really just shines a light on not just the music industry, but America and what it's like to be a black man in America. It's really just a great album, like from front to back. It was put together beautifully. The whole concept of the album. Oh my gosh, he put in so much work into it. For example, after every other song, there's a bit like a portion of a poem, right? And every portion that he takes from that poem, it relates to the song, and when you put every bit together, it relates to the theme and the message of the entire album. And this album it was just so beautifully arranged. It's definitely a classic. It's not just a hip hop classic, it's easily an American classic, and will and should be studied in academia for a long time. The music that he sampled has meaning. The artists that he picked to feature on it in certain songs have meaning. He he really dove into this project with everything he had, you know? The first thing you hear when you start the album is a sample from this song. Every nigga is a star, right? And the original creator of that song wrote that line and sung it in a way to empower black people in America and make them, because at the time, obviously, this was like the 80s, 70s, somewhere around there. It's not a great place, not a great time to be black and in America. But he wrote this song as a bit of the rally cry and a way to inspire people. And Kendrick Lamar is using it to the same effect. And the rest of the intro song is about the beginning of his superstardom. He has a little skit in the middle of the song where Dr. Dre is telling him how, all right, now you're here. The hard part is staying here. Throughout his whole career, he's been talking about a fear of his. He's afraid to lose his stature. On the song One Train, he raps about how he's afraid to fall off the cliff. And this is something that there's a whole bunch of examples of him, saying something to this effect where he just doesn't want to just have a massive drop in quality and for people to see him as, less than what he was. This obviously plays a role in his music because one, he does not pump out music every year. He hasn't released an album or any bit of music he hasn't released an album in like 3 years, and he hasn't released music like any musical project for 2 years. And like the last time that was a for the soundtrack of Black Panther, and he was the head, and he was like in charge of that. That's the closest thing to like a musical project we've gotten from him in over 2 years. And that's because he really cares about not just his craft, but like the perception people have of him. And that really comes out during this song and, well, in terms of like people's perception of him, throughout the whole album. Like, You Ain't Gotta Lie, where he talks about how he feels as though he doesn't fit in anymore, but his mom told him you ain't gotta lie to fit in, you don't fit in anymore. You're Kendrick Lamar, one of the biggest rappers in the world. You don't fit in anymore in Compton. It took him a while to like cope and accept it, but eventually he understood it. And the next song is where it's a live performance and he's brought onto stage and called the greatest rapper, the greatest number one rapper in the world. This is something that he believes, and it took him a long time to really not just accept that title, but the pressures and the responsibilities of having that title. There's a whole lot about this album, and there's countless video essays that you could watch about it, but this album really means a lot to me because on the last song, Moto Man, where he's talking to Tupac and reading his poems, it becomes clear to me that he isn't just mad at America and the music industry pimping him and his culture out just to make a profit. He's also disappointed and maybe even ashamed of himself for playing such a large role in it. He just doesn't want to be pimped out by some larger corporation that's making 10 times as much money off of his own music. And I really, really respect that. And it's made it really hard for me to figure out what I want to do. But I do know I do not want to be pimped out by some large corporation. Hopefully, that doesn't happen. I don't look like a giant sellout one day. But so it goes, I guess. And you know what? Speaking of giant corporations using people, for their own gain. There's a lot of examples of that. I guess I'll talk about the most recent one first, like this Epic Games and Apple situation. Epic Games agreed to have Fortnite in the App Store. And to have Fortnite in the App Store, Epic Games would have to allow Apple to take a 30% cut of any in-game purchases, right? Epic Games agreed to this part of the contract, right? But they felt like they don't want to pay that much, so they constructed a propaganda smearing of Apple. Like their plan was to demonize and make Apple out to be this greedy, money-hungry villain, right? And they wanted to use the fans as pawns in their little corporate legal lawsuit. And it had the effect that they wanted to. People are not on Apple's side, even though this was planned by Epic Games. They compared their situation to George Orwell's 1984, and that is just so tone deaf. Because for one, nobody should feel bad for either one of these companies. They're both multi-million, well, in Apple's case, like a multi-billion-dollar company. Nobody should feel bad about them. It's just that these companies should not be preying on the emotions of their consumers just to use them as pawns in their legal battles. Last year, I think it was, where and Sony and Marvel, right, were battling over the rights to Spider-Man's movie rights. And Disney knew exactly what they were doing when they tore up the contract that they agreed to solely because they weren't making enough money. They were still making money, but they just weren't making enough, and they didn't like that. So they tore up the contract. And instantly, people went and attacked Sony. Like they were the ones that tore up the deal. And Disney was perfectly fine with letting people assume that's what was happening. And this is just another example of companies using people and taking advantage of their emotions to try and get an upper hand in their legal battles and apply pressure to the other company. People were really on Disney's side, even though Disney is a blood-sucking corporate demon. They sued a little like this elementary school for using a picture of Mickey Mouse. Sued them over that because they're money-hungry demons, and their whole purpose is to maximize profits. They don't care about whether or not you enjoy the next Spider-Man movie. They care about maximizing the amount of money they can make off of Spider-Man. It really, really shouldn't be that way. But what are you going to do about it? You can't really boycott Disney, like that would be a really shitty existence, But at the very least, you shouldn't feel outraged or bad for them because they are just corporations and multi-billion-dollar corporations at that. So feeling bad for them is probably the worst thing that you could do. Okay, tip number 4. The next time we're boycotting something, or you're boycotting something like a company, don't burn your merchandise from them. Just donate it so that whatever money they made off of you, they will lose because somebody else is getting that for free. Okay. First round of the playoffs are done. I mean, I can't hear you on the thing. And I'm also, actually, you know what? I'm gonna just talk through. I'm gonna leave this in. I'm gonna leave this in. Yeah, they can't hear you, but why not leave this in? They don't know me. Yeah, I'm just talk to you. Yo, Josh, yo, the first round of the playoffs is going crazy right now. Well, I mean, like, there's only like three matchups that are going crazy. Everybody else is like a sweep, so it doesn't really matter. But like the three matchups that like are crazy right now, awesome. I'm not going to talk about the third one because I don't really care about those teams. But the Lakers and Clippers, they are getting, well, the Clippers are getting punched in the mouth. Lakers are fine. They bounce back a little bit. But the Clippers were ass. Especially Paul George. Paul George is a fucking loser. He sucks. Game one he was cool, but then two, three, four horrible games by him, and he's the reason they lost two of those games because he sucks. He only scored like I think his highest game was like 14 points, and he's shooting horribly. He's not playing good defense. He's just atrocious. And Kawhi Leonard is playing like the best basketball of his career, carrying him right now. And a whole bunch of people are making jokes about how Kawhi Leonard should have stayed in Toronto because he would have had an easier path to the finals. But damn, Kawhi probably regrets his choice. And Paul George wasn't even the first option. He wanted to team up with Jimmy Butler, but Jimmy said no. I think Jimmy just liked going to Miami more. But I'm going to talk about Miami and Jimmy when I talk about the Celtics and the 76ers. But the Lakers got the Trailblazers, right? And the Trailblazers were on fire during this playoffs. I talked about it in the last episode. It's just so crazy how fast people dismissed the Lakers. They were just talking a whole bunch of shit after game 1. It was a close game, and the Lakers also shot the worst ever in a playoff game, but it was still a close game. And people were so quick to just say that the Lakers are going to lose, LeBron's washed. This is going to be the worst part of LeBron's career. He got eliminated in the first round to the 8th seed. Oh, this is so embarrassing. Then the next 3 games, LeBron just dominates. In game 1, he had like a 38 point triple double, but people ignored that. And the next game they won, he only had like 10 points, but Anthony Davis went crazy. Then the next game, LeBron had a pretty good game. Then the next game, LeBron drops like 30 and 10 in a blowout. He only took like 12 shots, missed 2 times, made like 4 out of 5 threes, only had like 2 turnovers. He was unstoppable. And the only thing people could find to like hate about was how he gloated at the end of the game because he shot a deep 3-pointer and he sort of like banged his chest after. And that was the only thing that people could find to talk shit about. But that's enough of the West. Fuck that. The Celtics swept the 76ers, and Joel Embiid really carried them. Like he averaged like 30 and 10, and the rest of the 76ers just sucked ass. Their coach sucked ass. The whole way that their team was set up sucked ass. It was garbage. People still found a way to like blame Joel Embiid even though he was the only one playing good for the 76ers in that series. But it is what it is. And also, people were trashing Jimmy Butler for leaving the 76ers for the Miami Heat because they thought that the Miami Heat were just going to be an 8th seed at best, probably won't even get to the playoffs, and just saying if Jimmy Butler wants to win so bad and that's why he left Philly, why would he leave for that mediocre team? But the Heat swept the Pacers in the first round, and now they're going on to the second round. So he clearly made the right decision in leaving because he knew that the 76ers were a team that was horribly built. All their parts just don't fit at all. Ben Simmons can't shoot. Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons love to be in the paint, but they can't both be in the paint because you can just double both of them. The role players around them don't fit. Tobias Harris can't create his own shot consistently. Jimmy Butler saw all of that, so he left. And people trashed him. And people have been trashing him his whole career ever since he left ever since he talked trash about the Bulls. He said that the Bulls young players had were the problem, right? And he was right about that. Then he said that the coach in Chicago was bad, and he's right about that. He doesn't have a job anymore. Then he went to Minnesota, and he said the two star players in Minnesota at the time didn't have any work ethic, and he was right about that. Then he went to Philly, and he said that the whole team is dysfunctional, the coach sucks, and they're just not put together right, and he was right about that. And finally, he's in a place where there's structure, and they're moving in the right direction with good and solid pieces. And this is the best he's doing in his career. All those other teams, except for Philly, are horrible. Minnesota has a number one pick for a reason. The Chicago Bulls are a dumpster fire. They had to fire their head coach, who was an absolute idiot. It's a horrible organization over there. Like they're like in the Knicks category of just incompetence. And Jimmy Butler was 100% right for wanting to leave. Oh, and the Bucks are what? They have like a game 5 coming up. Oh, they didn't do the game 5 cuz protests. But I already talked about protests this episode, so I don't want to mug it down too much about that. But Milwaukee Bucks are probably going to win, barring any injuries, knock on wood. So with that being said, the second round is probably going to be Miami, Bucks, Celtics, Raptors for the East. And those are going to be really good series. Honestly, anybody could win any of those series. And if the Bucks get knocked out of the second round, Giannis is leaving, which is going to be really interesting because wherever he goes is going to be the next championship contender. And there's a lot of people liking him going to the Miami Heat, which would really, really drive a stake through Philadelphia because the chances of Jimmy Butler winning a championship is pretty high. And all the sports writers in Philly would look real stupid for talking trash about him. Oh yeah, the Celtics. Love the Celtics. Celtics are doing great. Swept the Sixers. Fuck yeah. Sadly, Gordon Hayward got injured, so that really screws them over. Like the one thing they had against the 76ers is their starters were just really, really good. And like the one thing that the Raptors do really good on on defense, besides all the other things that they do really good, is honing in on one star player and shutting them down, right? But you can't really do that with the Celtics because if you shut down Jason Tatum, Gordon Hayward, Kemba Walker, and Jaylen Brown are just going to go for 30. And, that's about 90 points plus the 15 that Jason Tatum is going to give him at the very least. So you can't just hone in on one player on the Celtics and expect to win. So the Raptors' main identity on defense is kind of in jeopardy with a healthy Gordon Hayward. But he's not healthy. So the playing field is now even. But Kyle Lowry got injured, and he was a real big part of that team. Because without him, there isn't any real consistent playmaker besides maybe Fred VanVleet. But Kyle Lowry was definitely the number 2 right next to Pascal Siakam. And Siakam can't really generate any half-court offense by himself, which is a real bad thing for the Raptors and really might hurt them in a close game, especially a game where the pace is going to be slowed down and they can't get as many transition points, which is what Siakam feasts on. And what the Raptors feast on, they have a pretty average half-court offense, but they're like number 1 or 2 in terms of fast break points. So that should be a real good series. In terms of like the Bucks and the Heat, the Bucks have been really running through the East and the NBA, but that's because Giannis and the Bucks are a really, really good regular season team. But if you're able to like hone in on one player, like the Bucks, like hone in on Giannis, right? The Bucks don't have like a second dude who can like create his own offense. And if you shut down Giannis, the Bucks are really, really, really average. And the Heat also happen to have the one player who's guarded Giannis the best, Bam Adebayo. So, in terms of matchups, this is probably the best matchup for the Bucks, in terms of like their probability of beating them. It's the Heat. So, it's going to be a really good second round if we ever get to a second round. Yeah, that's the NBA. All right, here's our first guess on a guy in his closet. It is my friend, all the way from fourth grade, Momo.
It took you a little long to figure that one out. Yeah, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going good. It's got a little bit of memory, whatever. I'm a little nervous, you're the first guest. It's a big day. It's a big day for a guy in his closet.
Understandable.
Yeah. So, I've known you for a little bit of a while,
You indeed have. It's been a
and
little while.
I've noticed that you like anime, don't you?
I can say for a fact I do.
Oh, okay. So, what was the first anime you got into?
First one I got into. Okay, so the thing about my history with the anime is that I didn't know that anime was a thing when I started watching it.
Ooh,
So when I was a kid, my brothers used to watch like Naruto and Dragon Ball Z. So when I was like 4 or 5, I'd watch that with them. And like when it came out around like 9 o'clock, my mother would let me stay up to watch like one episode every like Sunday or whatever when it came out. And I watched it and then I go to bed. That was kind of like the routine,
all right,
just
all
watching
right.
Naruto. But first one that I actually watched knowing anime, I think was Full Metal Alchemist.
Ooh, okay. Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah, the original, not the Brotherhood. Brotherhood is better in my opinion, but
Ooh,
the
hot take.
OG.
Hot take.
It's I think it's because Alchemist. There's a little side note for everyone. Full Metal Alchemist came out during the anime and caught up to it, and then had to make their own ending. While Brotherhood came out after the anime. It came out after the manga, and followed suit with the actual manga's ending.
Oh, so it was more structured.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. I got you.
And also Alchemist, if you want to actually finish it, you have to watch like 3 movies, which is not a man's dream.
Ooh, ooh. Would you say that that's your favorite anime, or is there like something else that you really hold near and dear?
Ooh, now we're getting into real hot takes.
Oh yeah.
My favorite, I think, at the moment, I will say it is probably purely because of how like hyped I was watching it was Death Note. And I think that's like kind of like a vague. It's kind of like the like go-to answer, except for like the classics like One Piece and Naruto. I think why I like Death Note so much was because it kind of showed you the intellectual side of a detective work, and there were like actual stakes. Like people died, and people like got bamboozled, and it was kind of like a roller coaster throughout. I think the only dead part that happened was like spoiler when a character dies, and they has to get like I'm just gonna say his name. L dies, and his 2 predecessors have to team up to work against the main villain Kira, which is like a good whatever. But L was top tier. Near and Mellow kind of wanted to be him, but they just kept wanting to be him.
Yeah, I mean, that
But
just
yeah,
sounds like some Shakespeare right there.
it does. It is. I think between that, good other classics like Psychopaths, and I don't even want. I think the word like favorite. I think it's because like I've watched them, and after I watch them, like yo, that's the new favorite. But now it's like since I have terrible memory, if you told me like a scene from it, I'd like remember it for like the first time. So it's like I don't. I if you told me to explain the show right now, I probably couldn't tell you the entire thing. But if you said something, I'd remember exactly what you're talking about. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get it. I get it. So anime, it's real artistic. It's great art, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And let's stay on the topic of art real quick, but let's shift mediums. Let's
Going to
talk about some
music.
music.
Ah, there it is.
Segway, segway.
Segue.
So music. Let's talk about it's a little gimme question. Who you listening to right now? Who's
Who
on
am
the
I listening
playlist?
to? They're gonna sound so off from each other, but like I started listening to Smino again, especially his album Black Season. That's the name, right?
With Black Swan?
Black Swan. Sorry, I said
Yeah.
season. That's what it is. Black Swan. I've been listening back to Beach Bunny, not Beach Bunny, Arctic Monkeys. Sorry, I said the wrong name.
Arctic
Uh,
Monkeys.
Arctic Monkeys, 505 to be specific. That's a song that I've been like listening to a lot. There's another song called "When the World Caves In," and that one's really nice to just listen to like randomly because just I guess it's like it's a good song without knowing the meaning of it. But the meaning of the song was because he released it after Trump was inaugurated, and the thing was supposed to be like the end, like the literal end of the world, because like he thought that you know how like World War III and like how we gave the nuclear codes to a
Like an
millionaire.
idiot. Yeah.
Exactly, like it's like literally the world's caving in.
So there's a lot of so you like songs with like some substance to them, something you can really sink your teeth into.
Yeah, I would say like if it talks about a subject or if it talks about a feeling, then those two are really good. If we
A
can talk about
feeling.
both, it's even greater.
Okay. So you really resonate with songs that you can connect to on an emotional level, I feel.
Yeah, I mean there's some guilty pleasures
Ooh.
through. I'm not gonna lie, there's some like dumb song. You ever heard a song that you know is bad, like through production property quality, actual lyrics, who's singing it,
Yeah.
just all 10 like 0 out of 10, but you still find yourself
Yeah.
listening to it.
Yeah.
Like you ever seen like Money Machine by like the Gecko guy or whatever?
Oh,
Like I'll just listen to that song and I'll be vibing to it. But I know in the back of my head I'm like, this is bad music.
yeah.
Like this is not what humanity wanted.
Oh my gosh. And like I bet like the first time I heard like like the Barbie girl song,
Oh, banger.
that slapped. But like the
Banger.
first time we heard that song, we were like 7, right?
Yeah, so we're like,
Even though
ew,
we
girls,
liked it,
cooties. Like we couldn't say anything.
yeah, we're not gonna like. I'm pretty sure every dude who heard that song when we were 7 liked it, but nobody's gonna admit that at all.
Because of the context that it's put into.
Exactly. Like even Justin Bieber, we all hated Justin Bieber. Did we know
Yeah.
why?
No.
No, but we
Because
did.
it's because he said baby 13 times, but then we'll bump Little Pump when he says Gucci Gang when he says it
Oh yeah,
87
it's
times.
completely different. It's 100% different.
Just because one is through a medium of like I guess male rap and the other one is like feelings and like you can't like no.
It's gross. It's gross.
That is very true. I think what it is like the thing about finding good music is that you have to first not care about what other people are currently listening to. Like I remember there was a whole train going against who was it? I think it was Harry Styles. Like a bunch of guys didn't listen to him.
Yeah.
But like his music isn't bad.
Yo, like one of his first little singles that he put out, "Sign of the Times." I
Yeah,
was like,
that was fire.
whoa, this dude was from one. This is like
Like this is like
crazy.
some actual stuff, and
Like
like
this is kind of crazy.
everyone was like, no, my sister was like a band girl, and like I can't associate myself with that culture. And
It's like
it's
you have
like
to listen.
if you think the music's good, and you find it catchy, then listen to it. Don't associate yourself with the community if you don't want to be. Like, I'm not gonna start dyeing my hair and start listening to geckos every 13 seconds. But if it comes on the radio, I'm bopping my head. Like, it's
Exactly,
God
man.
forbid it does, but
God
it does.
forbid.
Because that's like, oh, everyone. Yeah, and like the whole thing about like, just like as using it an example, like the gecko thing, it's like people will like immediately see the artist and then just be like, nope. Or they'll see like Henry Styles and they'll be like, nope, just because of like how they are. But like they'll ignore, even if they like their music objectively, they won't do it because of what people will think or what people will say.
So like the way people, who has a really good quote and like philosophy about that?
Who does?
This dude, Jean-Paul Sartre. He wrote this play, and in this play, there's this quote that's misquoted,
The
heavily,
quote
right?
that's misquoted.
Yeah, it's like it's misused, right?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's this quote. I don't know if you've heard it, but hell is other people, right?
Hell is other people.
Right? And the way
I have
it's
some.
used, right?
Mm-hmm.
People use it as like an excuse to just stay inside, never talk to anybody, and just be away and like be a recluse, right?
So like just to like seeing other people as like the issue, so they'll back away and exclude themselves as much as they can.
Exactly. That's the way people like interpreted it, like as it's been like distorted through history.
I can
But
see because like the literal translation is like, oh, people are like bad or
yeah,
people are
yeah,
going
yeah,
to hurt you,
exactly.
and then what's like the actual way that you're supposed to do it?
Like it was taken from this play that he wrote, right? And
Uh-huh.
the concept of the play is like the plot. This guy dies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he wakes up in this room, and he's in this room with two other people, right?
Mm.
And they don't know it yet, but this is hell. And once they realize that, they're just they don't understand because it really, is in real like juxtaposition to like what they've been taught about hell. Like, it's just fire, constant torture. But they soon to realize that they will never escape the judgment of the people around them since they're constantly in the same room as these people, right?
So the hell that he meant. So wait, now but the way you just explained it though, now then I'm taking it as like the first adaptation is that people are literally hell. So are you trying to say that like the worry that you have of other people is the hell? I
So
think I'm interpreting it wrong.
yeah, but like this is why it was so easily
Misunderstood. I see.
misunderstood because it's like the real meaning, it's not hard to like get to that conclusion of like don't be near other people, but
Mm.
the point of the meaning was not just other people are hell, it's the effect that other people have on us, right? Because the way that we judge ourselves is through the perspective of another person, right?
Oh,
So
so you're
the
saying like,
judgment of others is how we judge ourselves and what stock and value we put on ourselves. And this judgment is the hell brought by other people.
so in like layman's term, I'm not even sure if I'm using that word right. Basically like just breaking it down, you mean that like the fact that people are around you, it's not that they're judging you, it's that you're judging yourself based on what you think they will see you as.
Exactly, right?
So like it's like if like I like it's like say I'm wearing a shirt and I like it, but someone walks up to me and I think, oh, they're not gonna like it. So then
Exactly.
I begin to not like my shirt, even though they haven't done
Exactly.
anything.
Like think about all the times you saw something that you liked, but you were like, nah, other people wouldn't like it, right?
When I first wanted to get Heelys, the
Exactly, right?
memories.
Like it's a cool thing. Everybody likes it, but you feel like once you do it, then
That's
it's
when
not
it
cool,
becomes the bane of
right?
Satan.
And that's what he was trying to get at with hell is other people.
So then, like, obviously the opposite effect of that was to like show how useless that thinking would be in a common sense reality. As like, oh, if I like this thing, and I know that this person's like this person's knowledge of if they like it or not doesn't affect me, why should I care? And that was kind of like I think that's what he was trying to get people to understand, but it kind of like went the opposite way with people
Yeah.
being like, oh, so then I should just exclude everyone and then I'll be happy alone. It's like,
Yeah.
no, that's actually kind of cool. I wonder how the play would go though, because if they
It's
like, so if they're, I know I've never watched it. You probably might have, but the way I'd see it going is that like all of them are. You said it's three people. I'm assuming.
yeah.
So there's just three people in a room, and I feel
Hmm.
like they just never talk, and they just constantly think about what the other people are thinking, and then it just recycles over and over for eternity, and that's their hell.
Yeah. So like I haven't seen it, but like I've seen like little like the way that the stage is set up and like I've read parts of like the script or whatever you call it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of like they sit down and the guy like the play starts, they're sitting there and they start talking to each other and like eventually they figure out that they all died, right? And
I
it
see.
switches between like the thoughts of the dudes of like the main character and then it comes back out to like what he's saying out loud and that's how like it really focuses and it switches between like his inner thoughts and like what he says out loud, right? And it was just it's really interesting and I've been meaning to like watch it in some way. Yeah.
That's actually kind of cool that you mentioned that now because I feel like now that like that we're obviously like context to this podcast, we're all in quarantine because of COVID-19.
Yeah.
Uh, I feel like the fact that I haven't seen anybody or I haven't like been in contact with as many people as I have kind of like makes you like think about in the long run when you finally do see them how different you're gonna look or how different you're gonna act. And I'm not sure if that's happened to anybody else, but it happened to me recently because like I haven't hung out with people a lot, and I did like yesterday. And like before I left, I was like picking out clothes and stuff, and I was like, wait a minute, none of this stuff I've worn yet out. Like none of the stuff I've like done or like I haven't like been talking to people. So I'm wondering like if my mannerisms have changed. And
Oh,
I'm like,
oh,
and
didn't even think of that.
yeah, like how like different you're like how you act, like how what things you say. Because I think I like now, just like as like a side note, I've been finding myself saying pog or like poggers recently because I've been watching Twitch streams all the time. And imagine
Yeah.
if I just said that randomly in a conversation, someone's like, "What the hell?" Like you never say poggers, or and I just like wondering if like my like slight mannerisms and like my observation of that is kind of like of like a like an I don't know what it's called illusion to how the people felt in the play.
Yeah, it's good use of that word. Finnan would be proud.
Finneran
Um,
would be proud.
you know what? I would love to talk about how the coronavirus has affected society and a whole bunch of other stuff that we could talk about. And just, this has been pretty good, but we're running short on time,
Fair enough.
sadly.
So unfortunate.
Uh, can't wait to have you on another time when
Of
I
course.
arrange this better because I kind of put too much stuff in this episode. So whoopsies,
It's all good.
but this was fun. Can't wait to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, toodaloo. Oh,
To
before you go,
yeah,
I have a little tip for you.
got it.
I know I already did my two guys, but yeah, there's a third special one for Momo. Okay, and the tip is so. Have you noticed like on the bottom of a bell pepper, there's like little bumps, you know?
Can't say I have, but the next time I probably will. So what about the
Yeah.
bumps?
So like the next, it'll make perfect sense the next time you see them.
Mm-hmm.
But if it has four bumps, that means it's a female, and that's gonna be like sweeter and better for eating raw, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if it has three bumps, that means it's gonna have less seeds and it's gonna taste a lot better and it's gonna be better used for cooking.
Does the three mean that it's a male?
Yeah.
Okay, because you kind of just
Yeah, I kind
glazed
of
over
skipped
that.
over that.
I was like, is there no male? It's just a female population. That's kind of interesting. That I find that another. I guess is a little interesting fact for you. When kittens are born, you literally can't tell if it's a male or female until like 3-4 weeks because
Word?
it's literally just two dots. Because the sorry for language male, the like scrotum and things like that, they don't. It doesn't pop out. Like it doesn't leave the body until like
Oh,
4 weeks. So you can tell by the distance, but if it's like your first time seeing a kitten, you have no idea. So I remember when I named my first kitten like a female's name, and then I was like, "Oh, that's a wee wee," and I just had to live with that.
I love that little fun fact. But this is the end of our little interview.
Of course.
So I guess I will bid you adieu.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I forgot to record an outro. So this is that. I hope you guys enjoyed episode 2. And by you guys, I mean the 3 people watching. Shouts out to y'all. I had so much fun interviewing Momo. And I can't wait to get more guests on. Can't wait to upload more episodes. And I'll see you next time.